Amar Rechova Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Kol haroeh hamet ve'eno melavehu. Any person that sees a proceeding of funeral, ve'eno melavehu, and he does not follow the coffin that he showed him, the round rides at least a 4 amot. Don't have to necessarily go the entire way until the Bet HaKvarot, the cemetery, and participate in the actual burial, but at least to show some kavod of walking with the coffin, with the proceedings for at least 4 amot, says the Gemara, that person is considered disrespecting HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If you don't do it, over mishum lo'eg larash, you are mocking the poor, because again, cheref osehu is a disrespect to the neshama, hence a disrespect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The way the Amud Yomi for the month of Av is sponsored by Mr. and Mrs. Bayonfar for the Refuah Shlema of Shefa Bat and also for the health and happiness of the children. Rafaela Miriam Bat Zipporah, Chana Bat Zipporah, Rachel Bat Zipporah, and Sophia Sarah Bat Zipporah. Have a lot of Yiddish nachat from them. Amen. Amen. So says the Gemara, as it says, Lo'eg lerash cheref osehu. If you mock the poor man, you are disgracing its maker, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ve'im hilvahu mascharo. And if you do levaya, if you go after the coffin at least a little bit, what is your schar? Amar Rav Asi, alav hakatuv omer. Rav Asi taught that the pasuk says about this individual, malveh Hashem chonendal, which is again is taken out of context. The drasha of the Gemara, malveh Hashem, malveh means you lend, but here Chazal are darshaning it from melaveh. That means if you accompany HaKadosh Baruch Hu, chonen dal, if you are showing compassion to this dal, to this poor person that's really poor because they can't do mitzvot anymore, this dead corpse, the dead body, you are as though accompanying Hashem himself. In other words, Hashem resides with the poor, and therefore if you do a hesed to the poor, it's as though you have done the hesed and you have accompanied HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is tremendous. And that's considered directly as though you respected directly HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, this seems to say that any time that you see a proceeding of a Jewish funeral, you have to follow it. Now, this actually is aligned with a Braita in Masechet Ktuvot. Shemrash Daf Yomi should be around or past probably there already. The Braita there says in Daf Yud Zayin on page 17 that when you see a funeral, if it doesn't have enough people befitting its kavod, you're mechuyav to go after it. And again, it's good based on the round over here. You see that you don't have to necessarily go until the actual burial happens, but you have to show, go with them a little bit, show a little respect that you are partaking in the funeral. And how much is the shiur of a regular Jew? Regular Jew, how many people should it have involved in its funeral, his or her funeral, that you should say, okay, this funeral has enough people already. It's respectful enough. I don't have to join. How many? Says the Gemara in Masechet Ktuvot, 600,000. 600, if you have 600,000, I'm not sure, because aside from Chacham Obadiah, I don't know how many other people had 600,000, but, Chaim was close to that and so on. But 600,000 because just like 600,000 people would buy by Matan Torah, when the neshamot were given and so on, the netilat neshama, when the neshama leaves this world, also should be accompanied by that many people. It's a tremendous thing. And again, there's nobody that disagrees in the Braita in Masechet Ktuvot. So it seems to be, to some extent, binding halachically, but nevertheless, again, you see from here, good news that you don't have to necessarily, drop everything and go for the entire day every time that you have a funeral. But if you see it, it's happening. It's in process. You show some respect. So says the Gemara. Now we get to the very interesting Gemara of whether or not after a person leaves this world, he still is in contact to understand what's happening in this world. Do the dead people know what people in this world go through? Do they know about their family? Do they know about regular things that happens in this world and the future things that's going to happen? All of those items we're going to discuss in the next Gemara. Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Yonatan, they were walking in the cemetery in the Beit HaKbarot. Havakashadya techelta Rabbi Yonatan, the tzitziot with the tchelet of Rabbi Yonatan was dragging on the kvarot, on the floor. Amar le Rabbi Chia, dalye. Rabbi Chia tells Rabbi Yonatan, pick it up. Pick up your tzitziot. Now you should not be sweeping and dragging on top of the kvarot, kedeshlo yomru, that the neshamot of these deceased individuals should not say to us, so to speak, about us, look at these people. Look at these two people, Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Yonatan. Tomorrow they're going to come to us. That means their life is finite. Very soon, at some point, they're going to also die and become like us, lametim chofshim, that you can no longer do mitzvot. That's the greatest desire of a person that's dead. He sees the value of infinite schar of the mitzvot. You want to come back here and do mitzvot, right? If you would be letting them back over here, they wouldn't go to do any business deal or buy prime real estate in North Beverly Hills. They'll go learn Torah. They want to do the mitzvot because that is the only thing that stays afterwards. So now, if you do mitzvot in front of them, it's as if you say, you see, you can't do it, I can do it. So it's lo'eg l'rash. You're mocking them, you're making fun of them. So the feeling that it generates is, look at these people. They're also going to die at some point. They're not going to be able to do mitzvot, and now they're flaunting their ability to do mitzvot to us. It's not sensitive, it's not proper. Says the Gemara. Amale, Rabbi Yonatan turns back to him and says, what? They're disgracing us. Right? It's a disgrace. Cherpa. Amale. So Rabbi Yonatan turns back to Rabbi and says, Umi yadi kulahai. Do they really know anything? Do they even know what's happening over here? These people, the bodies were buried over here. But who says that they even know what we are doing over here? Says the Gemara, v'haktiv. Doesn't the pasuk say, you have to brush up on your kohelet, says Rabbi Yonatan. Kohelet says in Perek Tet, v'hametim enam yod'im me'uma, that the dead do not know anything. The full pasuk is, ki ahayim yod'im sheyamutu, that the living know that they are going to die, v'hametim enam yod'im me'uma, and the dead do not know anything. Ve'en od lahem sachar ki nishkach zichram, and there is no sachar because they're forgotten. Their zecher has been forgotten. So says the Gemara, Amar le, Rabbi Chia turns to him and says, Im karita lo shanita. If you read the pasuk, you did not review it. Im shanita lo shilashta. If you read it and you reviewed it, but you did not do it the third time. And even if you did it the third time, lo pirshu lecha. Nobody ever explained the pasuk to you properly. So by the way, from here also you see that you need to chazer your learning. You have to review it at least 4 times. Really, you see this from a Gemara in Masechet Eruvin and Daf Nun Dalet. The Gemara says, it seems the Gemara clearly indicating that until 4 times is learning, the 5th time is the first time chazara, really, right? So if you haven't reviewed the Amud Yomi 4 times, you haven't even learned it yet. That's basically what it seems to be. The Gemara there says the process of learning that Moshe Rabbeinu did with the Jews was Moshe Rabbeinu would come, teach it to Aaron, and then would teach it to Nadav Avihu. Then he would teach it to also Shivim Zekenim, and then he would teach it to all the Jews. 4. And then Moshe Rabbeinu would leave. Aaron would teach it 1 more time. So Aaron learned it 3 times from Moshe directly, and the 4th time, and each one of them. Then he would leave. Nadav Avihu would teach it, and they would leave. The Shivim Zekenim would teach it. So everyone got it at least 4 times, and then the Bet Midrash would start doing review, basically. So that's, somebody said once that that's why you see, why Rashi and Tosafot, on top of every page, if you see, there's 4 lines of them that covers on top of the Gemara lines to indicate that you have to at least learn 4 times, because even statistically speaking, even the people with IQ over 150, which are considered geniuses, they still don't understand and absorb more than 80%, 85% of the material the first time. So therefore, the concept of Chazara. But nevertheless, he says, basically, he didn't get shot in the pasuk, says Rabbi Chia. So he says, this is the real shot. When it says that the live know that they're going to, the living, they know that they're going to die. This is a reference to tzaddikim, that they're called live people, alive. Tzaddikim are called alive regardless of their living status. Even after they die, they're still called alive. So when the pasuk in Kohelet says, Ki hachayim, the real living people is not referring to a person that's pulse is still beating. Is referring to a tzaddik, which in not only in their physical life they're called living, but they are called living, period, because tzaddikim afilu b'mitatan keruim chayim. Their name is chayim. As the Gemara says in the Darim, like the goyim are called arale lev. The goy is called the arel. Even if he gets a brit milah, it's still called the arel, right? And a Jew, even if for medical reasons he couldn't get a brit milah, is still called mulim. So that's, again, you have this concept of a person that attains a certain name, and here is a similar concept that a tzaddik is called alive. And the Gemara says, I'm going to prove it to you, says Rabbi Chia. Shenemar, as it says, Ubenayahu ben Yehoyada. Benayahu was a general at the end of David HaMelech's life. He became the Sar Saba, the head of the army of Shlomo HaMelech. He was the one actually that delivered the execution of Yoav ben Tzruya, who Shlomo HaMelech was commanded by David to see to it that he dies because he had killed other important people in an unfair manner, and so on. So Benayahu ben Yehoyada was a tremendous person. He was his father was Yehoyada, who was the head of Sanhedrin. If you remember earlier on in Daf Dalet, we spoke a little bit about him when we spoke about the processes of David HaMelech's, the way the government of David HaMelech would be run. But nevertheless, Yehoyada was a tremendous tzaddik. So here the pasuk talking about Benayahu ben Yehoyada, who also was a tremendous personality, not just a warrior, but he was a tremendous tzaddik. He says about him, Benayahu ben Yehoyada ben Ish Chai. Now, the truth is, the pasuk is a krei ketiv. It says Chai, but it's read Chayil, ben Ish Chayil. So the simple understanding of the pasuk is Benayahu ben Yehoyada, the son of Yehoyada, who is a ben Ish Chayil, who is a son of an Ish Chayil, of a tremendous person. Raf Be'alim, that did tremendous things, many tremendous things. Mekaf Se'el, that he gathered, he was literally translated, it was from the city of Kaf Se'el. Hu hika et Shinei Ariel Moav, he broke the Ariel Moav, a very strong two heads of Moav. Vehu yarad ve'ika et ha'ari, and he went down and he beat the lion betoch habor, inside a cave, beyom hashalig, in a winter day. Which again, simply understanding is because lions they get strengthened in a cold day. Human beings usually get weakened. So it's basically describing the strength and the tremendous ability of Benayahu ben Yehoyada. But says the Gemara, and again, this is the old drashat Gemara brings now. Gemara says Ben Ish Chai. The reason that it says Ben Ish Chai, it's krekativ, even though that's Chayil, but it says Chai. So Atu Kula Alma Benim Metininhu. You think that this is a son of a living person? Well, the other people are sons of dead people. Everybody is a son of a living person. What do you mean Ben Ish Chai? Atu Kula Alma Benim Metininu. Everyone else is the sons of dead. So says the Gemara, Ela Ben Ish Chai What he means is the son of an individual, Yehoyada, who was a tremendous tzaddik, she'afilu b'mitato karui hai, that even after he's dead, he's still considered alive. Rav Pa'alim, now the Gemara wants is added, the Gemara dashes the entire pasuk. Rav Pa'alim mekaftzeel, sheriba v'kibes Rav Pa'alim, that he gathered Pa'alim leTorah, workers for Torah. Talmidei Chachamim in several places in Shas are called Pa'alim, workers, because that, the mindset of a Ben Torah, of a Talmidei Chacham is you have to always work. Talmidei Chachamim, you're never sitting, you're always doing, you're always learning, you're always teaching, you're always doing. So Rav Pa'alim, he gathered so many Pa'alim la Torah, so many people who are learning Torah. What does that mean? That he beat the two Ariel Moab. Says the Gemara, Ariel is a reference to Beit HaMikdash. We call Beit HaMikdash Binyan Ariel, right? Because the reason for it is, an Aryeh, a lion, is wider on the face part of his body and is very narrow in the back of the body. Unlike many other animals that are exactly the opposite, Aryeh has a large, wide head, and the back is narrower, and the binyan of the Beit HaMikdash was very much similar. The front of it, the front of the area of Kodesh was much wider, the back of it was much more narrow. So that's why it's called Aryeh. Of course, aside from many other deeper reasons of why lion is attributed to the structure of the Beit HaMikdash, but in simple format, also it's called Ariel because of that. Now, Shnei Ariel means the two Batei Mikdash, both Bait Rishon and Bait Sheni. So says the Gemara, Shelo hiniach kemoto, he did not leave anyone like himself. B'Mikdash Rishon v'lo b'Mikdash Sheni. In considering both of the Batei Mikdash, he was the top person in Tzidkut. He was a tremendous tzaddik. V'hu yarad v'hikah et ha'ari b'toch habor. What is that referring to? That he went down and he beat the lion. V'yom ha'shalek ikah de'amri. There are those who say that Tavar Gzizi de Barda, that he broke pieces of ice, v'nachat v'tavar, and he went and he did Tvilah. So Rashi says this was a Tvilat Ezra, which later on in the Gemara we're going to study about. That really invokes the question of if Tvilat Ezra, a Balkeri, someone that had similar emission, had to go to a mikveh before he learned, or before he davened at least. So why do you need Tevilat Ezra, which again is discussed in Masechet Baba Kama in Daf Pei Beit, but Lemase, the Rashi understands that this was Tevilat Ezra for Tefillah, or for learning Torah, which is more of a pious individual thing. It's not an obligation necessarily, because Divrei Torah enam mekabelim tumah, that Torah does not accept any tumah. So even a Balkeri really would be allowed to learn Torah, but Hasidim would be going the extra mile to make sure that their body is tahor to learn. Now, based on the Gemara that I just mentioned in Baba Kama, Daf Pei Bet, there are those Rishonim who learn, the Tosafot there learns that what he did was, he did Tevilav of Baal Keri to eat Kochim B'Tahara, Chulin B'Tahara rather. That even Chulin, even things that are not Kodesh, the food that are Kodesh, you have to be tahor to be able to eat, that's for sure. But Hasidim, tremendous people, will make sure to go to mikveh and to be tahor even when they ate chulin. So that's when you have a mikveh of Spa of Beverly Hills that is, it's warm and nice and beautiful lighting. But imagine going to a cold river and having to break the ice and go in to do a humrah. That shows the level of piety of this individual. I remember my grandfather Al Shalom telling me that back in Yazd in Iran, it was the same thing. Women would go to rivers, and winter there is pretty cold. I went there when I was very, very young to visit. I made a tour around the main cities in Iran to just observe the minhagim and different ways of Jewish life. So I must have gotten to Yazd about, the train got there at about 3:00 a.m. I felt my fingers were falling off. It was so cold. And then it really kicked what grandfather Al Shalom told me. He said women would go break this ice to go in the mikveh. That was their mikveh, oftentimes. And tremendous, not time to elaborate on this, but the Mesirut Nefesh of our mothers and grandmothers. But nevertheless, this is the Gemara even puts this on pedestal that, Benayel ben Yehoyada, what he did? He one time broke the ice to go to mikveh for a chumrah, for eating, according to Tosfot there, for eating chulin b'tahara. Even chulin, he should eat it b'tahara. According to Rashi, is for Tfilat Ezra, which again for learning Torah would be weiter chumrah. But nevertheless, you see the level of piety of this individual. Says the Gemara. Ika de Amri, and there are those who say, no, the Tana Safra de Berav, Beyoma de Sitva, that he learned the entire Safra de Berav, Beyoma de Sitva, in a cold day. So Safra de Berav is the reference to Torat Kohanim, and there are those who say why Safra de Berav? Because it's the most difficult part, and that's why it's called Shire Ariel Moab. Hikayat Aryeh, he beat the lion because Sefer Torat Kohanim is Kochim. Kochim is difficult. Now, why is it called Safra de Berav? There are those who say because this was the most prevalent learning in the Bet Midrash. It's a halachic midrash. The Torat Kohanim is a halachic midrash, and therefore that's the most prevalent learning of the midrashic works in the Bet Midrash. Others say Rav Shmuel. Rav was the author of Torat Kohanim. That's what it's called, Safra de Berav, the Sefer of Rav. So either Berav means Bet Midrash because that's the most prevalent, or Safra de Berav, that the author was Rav. Now the Gemara says, and the second part of it, again, remember, this is in the middle, amidst Rabbi Chia explaining to Rabbi Yonatan how he got wrong understanding, wrong pshat in the Pasuk in Kohelet. So he said, when he says that the living know that they're going to die, it's talking about tzaddikim. That means tzaddikim are very mindful that one day you're not going to be here. So therefore, chaper as much mitzvahs as you can. Grab mitzvahs, because one day we're not going to be here, right? On the other hand, the second part of Pasuk he's explaining, the fact that it says the dead do not know anything, you know what that is referring to? It's referring to Reshayim. Reshayim, even in their lifetime, they're called dead. And I prove it to you as well, says the Gemara. Shenema. It says about Melech Tzidkiyahu, the last Jewish king before the Churban. It's the king of the time of Churban, Tzidkiyahu HaMelech. V'ata chalal rasha, the Navi says about him, you are a corpse, you're a rasha, Nasi Israel. So you see, he's talking about him, he's talking to him. He's alive physically, his pulse, his heart is beating, but it tells him you are a corpse. So you see, they're called dead even amidst their lifetime. Now, the problem, of course, with this is that Tzidkiyahu was a Melech Tzaddik. So what Gemara is calling him, the Rabbi is calling him Rasha. Why is that? There are two main understandings. Either because he did not give proper tochacha, he did not give proper rebuke, he did not chastise his generation within his power that he had as a king, or because he did one act that actually brought about his demise, which was not a proper thing. Tzidkiyahu HaMelech saw Nebuchadnezzar in a private setting in the jungle as he was eating a live rabbit. Nebuchadnezzar was a Vilta Chaya, was a wild man, and Tzidkiyahu saw him once grabbing a live rabbit, biting and eating it. And when Nebuchadnezzar saw that he witnessed this, he made him promise and swear that he's not going to tell anyone about this. An embarrassing moment, right? So Tzidkiyahu couldn't, it was bubbling inside of him. And it's the juiciest piece of Lashon Hara about the Rasha, right? It was bubbling and bubbling. At last, he went and he got a heter. He was matir his Shavuah in front of Hachamim, and he went and said it to people. Of course, right away got back on Facebook to Nebuchadnezzar, right? And Nebuchadnezzar confronted the Chachamim. He said, you gave him a heter. What's the halacha? If someone makes a shvuah, can you open it for him? You say, yeah, there's a heter. You can open a shvuah. So how about if it's between two people? Can you do it without the consent, without the knowledge of the other person? They said no. And that's really what started the Nebuchadnezzar off. And that was a wrong thing that Tzidkiyahu did. So therefore, it would be called Rasha, that account. But again, that's a longer discussion for a different time. Says the Gemara. So you see that a person that's living, if it's a Rasha, is called dead. Says the Gemara. I could tell you another pasuk also that indicates that a Rasha is called dead. When we talk about capital punishment of mitat bedin, the pasuk says, based on 2 or 3 edim of witnesses, yumat hamet, the dead should be killed. So says the Gemara, chayu. You should say yumat haish. What do you mean yumat hamet? He's not dead yet. If he's dead, why are you killing him? He's alive, but it's called dead because he's a rasha. Someone that's getting capital punishment, of course he's a rasha, right? So you see from here that the rasha called a dead person, even even when they're alive physically. Fine. So says the Gemara, basically, you have no reason to believe that the dead don't know anything about this world. That's why he pushed back. So we're going to put this on a hold and try to see other encounters of such nature, of debating whether or not dead people know about what goes on in this world. So remember, the first account was Rabbi going in the Berachot, right? And one of them said, pick up your tzitzit. He said, they don't know. He said, no, you're not correct about that. The pasuk in Kohelet is not a raya, is not a proof that they don't know. So for all we know, they could know, but we don't know yet, right? So the Gemara goes in the next attempt. The sons of Rabbi Chia went to their fields to take care of some business after their father Rabbi Chia was passed away, and they were not used to working. They were tremendous Talmidei Chachamim. Gemara says in several different places the unbelievable level of tzidkut, of amazing chashivut of Rabbi Chia and his sons. In fact, the Gemara says in Masechet Sukkah, Daf Chaf, that 3 times Torah was forgotten from the Jewish nation, and it was brought back by people from the Babylonian exile. The first time was Ezra. Ezra Sofer went from Babel to Eretz Yisrael to reestablish the Torah. The second time was by Hillel coming and establishing the Torah back in Eretz Yisrael. And the third time was Rabbi Chia Ubanav. Rabbi Chia was a tremendous person. The Gemara talks about his debate of how he would keep the Torah going, that it should not be forgotten. But nevertheless, his own sons had trouble in some of their learning because now they were not used to not learning the whole day. They had to go take care of their inheritance, and iyakar lehu talmudaihu. Parts of their learning became hard for them to remember. They were working very hard to try to remember the details of what they had learned in some areas. One of them tells the other one, you know how important this was for our father, that Torah should not get forgotten, based on the Gemara that we just mentioned. I'm sure our father knows about this sar that we're going through. The other one tells him, what are you talking about? He doesn't know. The dead people don't know what's happening here. So again, machloket between the sons of Rabbi Chia, whether or not the dead know about the life. The Haktiv, the pasuk says, that his children, a person's children in this world, could have a lot of kavod and get to high places, and he doesn't know. He wouldn't know. The other one that argued first that the father knows, he said, no, lo yada. You want to argue that he doesn't know? The other pasuk says, that even after death, the flesh of a person feels the pain. And his nefesh, his soul, is going to be mourning. So you see, they have feelings, they have actual knowledge about the pain that even the body goes through. So Rabbi Yitzchak explained this pasuk, when the body in the process of decomposition in the ground, when the worms, when the different creatures eat at it, every one of them is like poking a large needle inside a living person's body, like the needle in the flesh of a live person. So then the other brother answers, says, no, that's different. Amri, Besara diduhu yad. Their own sar, they know, because perhaps the neshama is still attached with the body until it decomposes. The Peleoetz writes, Rabbi Eliezer Popov from Izmir, from Turkey, the famous Peleoetz, Chesed Alafim, many Sfarim, tremendous Sadiq. He writes in Peleoetz, it says the neshama of a person is attached to the body until it decomposes. The neshama does not have menucha. And then he goes at length to explain the Ariya Kadosh and so on. And amidst that, he writes a tzava'ah. He writes a part of his will. Says, therefore, by the way, once I'm at it, I'm telling you, whoever listens to me, my children, my students, when I die, make sure to bury me in a ground that has acidic nature, that my body is going to decompose right away, very quickly. That's how he writes over there. So maybe the Gemara says that's because their own flesh, they know, because the neshama is still attachment to that, but the sar, the occurrings of other people in the world, they have no business knowing, so therefore maybe they don't know. So no proof, basically. But no, the Gemara says no, they don't know. We rent the Braita. There was a story with the Chasid Echad. Normally speaking, the Gemara in Baba Kama, Daf Kuf Gimel, many other places says, whenever we say Chasid Echad, is a reference either to Rabbi Yehuda ben Ilai or Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba. Two people who are called the Chasid, right? So it says, Maaseh b'Chasid Echad, Shenatan dinar la'ani be'erev Rosh Hashanah. That erev Rosh Hashanah, he gave his last penny to an ani, that the ani should have some comfort level on Rosh Hashanah. B'Sheneh Basoret, this was years of very trying years of difficult famine. And then he came home. The wife said, what happened with the money for the kiddush, for whatever it is, right? And he's like, right? And she figures out that what happened. And they got into a shalom bayit massive fight to the degree that he ran out of house and he went to his favorite hiding place. Where do you hide? That your wife shouldn't find you? Bet HaKvarot. Right? He went to the cemetery. Right? He took his pillow and he ran. He went and he slept in Bet HaKvarot at that night. Says the Gemara, he heard two neshamot that they were communicating, and they were speaking to each other. Amra, these are two young girls that had passed on. Amra chadal chaverta. One of them tells the friend, Chaverti boi v'nashut ba'olam. My friend, let's go. It's Rosh Hashanah night. Let's go and travel. V'nishma ma'achorei pargod, and hear from ma'achorei pargod, from behind the secret curtain of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what gezerot, what decrees are going to be coming about for this year. Ma pur'anut ba'olam. It's been difficult, trying years. Let's go see what's going to be the lot of this year. This, by the way, is a very interesting concept because this is Leil Rosh Hashanah, and we, generally speaking, understand that the din of Rosh Hashanah does not happen until the morning of Rosh Hashanah. So was this the second day of Rosh Hashanah or not? It's a massive and very fascinating thought. I wish we had hours and hours and hours to do this Amud with all the things that could be discussed. This is just a fascinating, unbelievably amazing Amud of the Gemara. So be that as it may, the Gemara says, Amra lecha, the friend tells this first one, Any yechola, I can't come, I'm embarrassed. By the way, you see from here that the feelings of a person to some extent are extended in their life after death as well. So I'm embarrassed. Why? Because I was buried with very degrading material. Instead of having proper tachlichin, I was buried in machselet shel kanim. They put me with a little bamboo mat instead of proper tachlichim, so I can't come. I'm embarrassed. Shani kivura b'machselet shel kanim. Ela lechi at, you go. Umashat shomat. Really, come tell me what you see, what you hear. She went and came back and told the friend, so, oh, you won't believe this. Chaverti ma shamata, he says, what did you hear? Ma'achorei pargod. Amralah, she says over, shamati shkola zorea b'rvi'a rishona. If you plant in rvi'a rishona early on, barat malkeoto. They're going to come out and they're going to harden, and Therefore, when the barat comes, when hail comes, they're going to all break and get destroyed. But if you plant a little bit later, they're going to be soft. The barat is not going to affect them so much. And therefore, whoever plants early this year, he's going to lose everything that he plants. Halachu, so this Chassid that heard this, I said, whoa, inside information. Maybe it's true, maybe not. Let me try it. So he waited until Rav Yashnia, and he planted in Rav Yashnia. Everyone else planted in Rav Yarishona, and he did in Rav Yashnia. And what happened? Sure enough, she was right. Barat hail came and destroyed everyone else's thing, and he made millions. He became rich, right? Everyone else's produce got destroyed, and his was safe and good. The Shana Acheret, right? The next year, he already early on reserved his seed in Betekvarot. He made sure to give the tzedakah to Ani Erev Rosh Hashanah. He got into a fight and he went to Betekvarot, right? Or he didn't get into a fight and just went there anyway. So he goes to the Betekvarot. He marked the place. He went to sleep in the same exact spot. The Shamaota, sure enough, these two girls, they're speaking again. Shama Sheruchot Misaprot, Zu im Zu. Again, the first one says, let's go and see what's happening. Says, I can't come. I told you last year. I told you already. I have been buried with this bamboo mat. I can't come. You go, and whatever you hear, come and tell me. She went and she heard and she came back, and the other one inquired. She says, what did you hear? Said, this year you won't believe it. It's the opposite. If you plant in the second one, the shidafon, the bad winds and whatever, the produce is going to be destroyed. But if you do it in early on, then it's going to be strong and it's going to withhold and it's going to be good. So this guy said, great. He goes and does it early on, but if Yarishona, again, everyone else got destroyed, and he made his millions. So his wife said, wait a second. Since I kicked you out of the house last year, business is booming. Like, what's happening? Right? And he tells her, right? First mistake. He tells her, he says, last year everyone got destroyed, and against everyone else, yours was good. And this year, the same thing. What's the secret? He said the entire story to her. Amru, and the story was, they said, after a few days, the wife of this Chassid gets into a fight with the mother of that girl that had passed away and buried. Poor family, was so poor that they didn't have money to have proper tachlichim, and they buried their daughter in Machzelet Shel Kanim, in the bamboo mat. They got into a fight, and in the heat of a moment, she said, you guys, you're so low that you buried your daughter with a bamboo mat. She's embarrassed even in the world to come. She said it. So what happened? The third year, he goes to his reserved spot, this guy, right? And we're out of time, so I want to finish this up, but let's actually pick this up, B'ezrat Hashem, next day. I don't want to.
This is a cliffhanger.
This is cliffhanger.
Actually, it's
a 1 minute at a time.
It's a good method each time to do it like that.
Not an hour. Who's not going to show up?